So thank you so much for arriving and joining the FEPS team for this New Year reception, which has been a tradition for a very, very long time. And since 2020, it has also been a tradition to launch the Progressive Yearbook. And the Progressive Yearbook is really an emblematic product of FEPS since 5 years ago. And it's a product of a lot of work from the FEPS team. But before I talk about this, let me just say that in the Brussels bubble, we very often speak about the political families. And I think in FEPS, there is no better occasion than this one when we really see that the political family is not a cliche, but we come together this time around, members of the Scientific Council, members of the FEPS Bureau, activists, colleagues who work in the European Parliament for the S&D group or in the S&D group, and other EU institutions. And indeed, we reflect together on the achievements, also the difficulties of the previous year, and also on what is ahead of us. And of course, this is sometimes a very serious discussion, but in the context of the yearbook, I think we can be a little bit more relaxed and see a lot of joy also in the work, which otherwise is sometimes a matter of really hard labor. Now, as I said, yeah, this is also the rare opportunity at the launch of the yearbook and the new reception when I'm allowed to use the Madonna microphone. This is called the Madonna microphone, and this makes it really a special event. Look, but indeed, essentially, the product is in the center of the attention. Before I would invite our president for a welcome address, let's see a little video about the product, which you might have picked out outside before entering the room. If not, do it later, right? So let's now watch the video together about the FEPS Progressive Yearbook 2024. That was the contents of the book as presented by the communications unit of FEPS. Thanks for producing this. And I would like to ask now our president, Maria Jo Rodrigues, to deliver a short welcome address. Maria, the floor is yours.
So, great pleasure to receive you, all of you, in our beautiful headquarters. And also making sure that we see this. That's okay. Well, because I see the full room over there. Warm welcome to all of you for this special gathering, the new year, the launch of the Progressive Yearbook, with such a beautiful audience here. And we are a progressive community having the pleasure to see each other today in our common house called FEPS, the Foundation of European Progressive Studies. Today, we are preparing ourselves for a very special year, a year where more than half of humankind will vote including us Europeans, and we know that we are going to a new phase of the European project. What I will tell you now is based on many insights coming from our expert community, our policy-making community. We are a permanent laboratory, and our role is also to give a long-term overview about what might happen. Well, there are many questions, many uncertainties, but there are things we are sure about. The first one is that we are dealing now with a completely different international landscape, because the multipolar world is there, because we have war in our continent, because we have direct conflicts very close to us, notably in the Middle East, and we need to prepare ourselves for a completely different international landscape. We know that this is our moral and political duty to support Ukraine against Russian aggression, but we know that we cannot do it alone. So we need to make sure that we build the necessary bridges across the world, that we cooperate with the rest of the world on many other challenges, and most of all, we need to recreate the multilateral system to make it a more inclusive, a fairer one, and to have a Europe global actor, yes, but working with the others for a fairer world, dealing with the many challenges we have in front of us. This we know, in spite of many question marks, notably about what might happen in the American elections. And then there is a second thing we know, is that we need to prepare ourselves for a new way to develop our countries and our continent. We know this is about the green transition, and we are so honored that we have with us today one of the leading personalities of the Progressive family in charge executive pushing for this Green Deal. We know that on the digital transition, we are lagging behind United States and China. We made an effort to catch up with several regulatory initiatives, but we also know that at the end of the day, what is at stake is for us Europeans to be creative, to be able to innovate in the digital transition, and to put this at the service of our citizens' needs. So there is a lot to be done. And all in all, we do need an industrial policy. Industrial policy is back in the European agenda. And then we also know that our social model, which is our dearest concern and also achievement as Progressive family, is also confronted with many difficulties. Because we have aging, because we have new social inequalities emerging, because we know that care needs are there across the population spectrum, and our welfare systems are not prepared to deal with this. So we need to build a new pillar of welfare systems providing the necessary care. Also because we want to make sure that there is real equality between men and women. But beyond that, we know that our social protection system must be supported by full employment, quality jobs, and new sources of taxation. So this means a lot of important reforms to prepare our welfare system for the next phase. And if we want to conduct all these changes, we need to involve citizens. So this is about democracy, democracy at all levels. We are very concerned by the lack of respect of rule of law inside the European Union. This is something we cannot accept. But we also know that if you really want to confront the far right in front of us, we need to involve citizens much closely, to listen to them, whatever their complaints, whatever their criticisms, to make sure that together with citizens, we can really put forward the solutions we need at local level, at national and European. Beyond that, this we can call it democratic transformation. We should also prepare for something really important, I would say, an historical task of the next phase of the European project, which has to do with peace in our continent, meaning a new wave of enlargement, because the best way to deter security threats is to enlarge, to prepare a new wave of enlargement. This is a big undertaking. This will take some time, but we need to start involving these new candidate countries in different ways, in external action, in energy networks, in digital networks, in education, in culture. And while we prepare this big enlargement operation, we also need to combine this with the internal reform of the European Union. So here we are again in central principle of our European integration, which is whenever we enlarge, we need to deepen. We are preparing this. We, Progressive Family, we are preparing precise proposals to address this. And I would like to tell you that you can fully count on FEPS. FEPS not only as a hub in Brussels, but a network. You need to think about a network of more than 60 foundations across Europe and beyond Europe, but also a large community of, in fact, some thousands of experts, actors of civil society, policymakers at all levels. So this is a large community. This is a pleasure to count on you, and you can also count on us. So thank you very much. And let's go on with our New Year launch. Dear Secretary.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maria, especially for highlighting that indeed 2024 is a special year. This is a more political year with very important elections in Brussels, but also outside Europe, right? I think we all have in the back of our mind the importance of the US election and many other important developments that are coming. And indeed, we need to be prepared. And our hope is that this book will contribute to these preparations, not only to succeed, but also to design a policy agenda for the next 5 years, which will bring Europe to the desired directions of the progressives. Now, in the next just 2 or 3 minutes, indeed, I would like to say a few words about the book, because afterwards, indeed, you will have a selection of the authors who join us, and they will highlight why it has an added value, what they wrote, why they think that what is in this book cannot be found elsewhere in other products. Just to highlight that indeed this is the 5th one, and we observed that one of the most difficult struggles is to choose the cover design. So now we are competing with The Economist, because The Economist obviously is a very, very famous cover design. So this is also becoming a kind of political puzzle. You know, why certain pictures were selected, why this kind of design was arranged on the front cover, why not the symmetrical formula. So please spend some time on this. But of course, the most important is that you read as much as you can. The structure internally is more or less the same what we had before. So we try to ensure not only that the content has a shelf life, and in 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, you can pick this from your shelf and say, okay, what happened in 2020? How do you respond to the corona? Or how do you respond to the Russian aggression in 2022? I think, you know, we try to follow as much as we can with the intention to note the most important one. Of course, with time, you can look back and check whether the predictions really worked out or they didn't work out, but sometimes they do. Sometimes they do, and that's also very interesting exercise to run our brains about the possible future scenarios. So we always have a chronology for those who like facts. We always have, a chapter about the most important progressive developments. We always have a national focus and a focus on the big global issues and, as I mentioned, the predictions. And we always have, this is also an important tradition, the presentation of the Progressive Person of the Year, to which I will come in 15 minutes, but not before. What I have the pleasure to indeed highlight all the time, that this is really a product of a teamwork. The FEPS team considers this as something very important at the end of the year, but also the presentation, the launch at the start of the year. It overlaps a little bit the Christmas period. So from a planning point of view, of course, it is delicate, but colleagues who have been working on this, in particular, Hedwig Justo, who is also the editor-in-chief of the Progressive Post. She is there. Anya Skripek, who has hardly a seat, but she's joining us from the door, the Director of Research and Training. And I should also highlight Marianne Polga, who is our FEPS trainee. Is Marianne here? Yes, over there. Marianne is over there. She's also standing instead of sitting. But of course, colleagues from communication, project management also contributed, but I will not read the whole list of the FEPS team. This is, of course, more or less the same group of colleagues which also work on the Progressive Post, but this is produced differently because most of what you read in the printed Progressive Post had been already online. This has not been online yet, right? So this is something absolutely original, and it might as well be a surprise for you. So I think this much should be about, let's say, the general structure of the yearbook. And we asked 3 authors, 2 of them are present, 1 of them will join us online, to give the essence of their contribution. And it will be FEPS Vice President Uwe OPTENHÖGEL to start with presenting a few key points of the piece you wrote about the global issues. Feel free to use that microphone in the lectern.
Yeah, thank you, László. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Dear friends, as you've heard, there is an article about the BRICS in the yearbook. Why BRICS? Of course, because we think it matters, even though it has not produced very many concrete results. But Maria already alluded to the extreme dynamic in the international system. So BRICS is generally treated as an actor in the international community, in the international system. But on a closer look, when I did some research for the article, on a closer look, I came to the conclusion that it is much more of a symptom of the changes in the international arena than a cause. What we have seen over the last 20 years is really that the weight between states and civilizations is changing with the economic and technological modernization of the former Third World, what we called formerly Third World. And BRICS is giving these changes an institutional face, but it's not the cause of the changes. For this to be successful, it's often sufficient to promote symbolic politics. Looking at the legacy of the loose association, because BRICS is a very loose association, no secretariat, no fixed seat, no statutes, no criteria for members, and I could go on. It's a very loose association, which brings together states of very different kind, authoritarian regimes with democracies, nuclear powers with very militarily weak countries. So this loose association, BRICS, it is evident that the substantial developmental and economic achievements are very limited. But the geopolitical impact can nevertheless be considerable, because it is very often competition about narratives which define the perception of the changes in the international arena. And in this regard, BRICS is fairly successful. History does teach us that a world with multiple centers of power tends to increase the risk of conflict and war. A multipolar world can only ensure stability if the major powers collaborate. Where multipolarity is not integrated into multilateralism, the outcome is fragmentation and war. Mm-hmm. And this is a little bit the problem we are facing, because there are clear tendencies towards a new bipolar world, China, US. So if there is not cooperation among the bigger powers, we might really enter a period of major trouble, which we're actually in my personal perception, if you look at the two wars that are going on, Ukraine and Gaza and Israel. So when it all started, BRICS, it was 5 countries. It was 5 countries, Brazil, Russia, China, India, and later on South Africa a year later. But that was a different world in 2009, totally different world. Nobody thought about Donald Trump as a president of the United States. There was no Xi Jinping. There were 12% growth rates in China. Barack Obama came in with a lot of hope for the progressives, but we were all engaged in Afghanistan still. So this all happened in 15 years, many other things. The world has changed radically. And when BRICS was founded, it was basically a developmentalist endeavor. Because by then, the only exception was Russia, which turned from a former superpower of the bloc conflict. It aligned with developing countries, Brazil, India, South Africa, and China. That was already strange by then, but it was basically developmental ambitions these countries had. In the meantime, I would say it turned, especially with the enlargement in South Africa in the summer of 2023, into a more geopolitical and a more geopolitical entity which challenges basically the West. And that is due to the influence of China and Russia to a large extent. So if we look at the countries that are affiliated newly, which are supposed to start now in the 1st of January of 2024, it's Saudi Arabia, it's the United Arab Emirates, it's Argentina, which will not affiliate because it got a very interesting new president with some particular views on the world and his country. Then it is, what else? That was 3, I think. Yeah, then it is Egypt and Ethiopia and Iran. So what we have, the group of 4, the club of 5 is enlarged to a club of 11, and the new members consist of 2 monarchies, 1 theocracy, a de facto military dictatorship, and a country currently engaged in a civil war. And Argentina, the only democracy, is not affiliating. So what is this thing heading for? I think what we have seen in the enlargement in the summer of 2023 in South Africa is that many other countries were interested to join the BRICS, but the selection of the countries I have mentioned now is due to particular interests of Russia and China, and this might be something you will not read in other publications. I think the expansion of the BRICS to include important energy exporters, such as Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Iran, boosts the nominal importance of BRICS as an energy and financial partnership. Countries such as Iran, Russia, and China are highly motivated to develop an alternative currency system due to their concerns about sanctions and being excluded from the dollar-based system. This expansion will also increase the potential for the use of currencies other than the dollar in the pricing, trading, and settlement of energy. The expansion of the BRICS to include new energy powers could lead to the emergence of alternative markets for energy trading, both for oil and natural gas. For example, the renminbi-dominated oil future market, which was established in 2018 by China, has performed strongly. The Chinese government is also very keen to promote the use of the renminbi for natural gas trading. So I think from a club of 5 developmentalist-oriented countries, the BRICS changed into a power player in geopolitical terms today, where the forces behind that are basically Russia and China, who are interested in that. Now, this raises the question, and with this I will come to an end. What do the remaining democracies do in BRICS? Yeah, that's quite uncertain. Lula, the president of Brazil, has explicitly said it's not an anti-Western club. It's an association to support a better integration and an adequate participation of the developing countries in the international system and in the UN system. So my conclusion would really be that Europe should better take these developments serious, because the situation is to stay. I mean, this is not going away. So I think Europe better tries to reorient its own development policy in a way that it's no longer lecturing and hectoring third world countries, but build solid cooperation relations to have a sustainable cooperation with countries in the global south. That is probably a late wake-up call. The BRICS.
Why don't you sit here for a moment? And I think it's clear from your presentation that we are facing a rapid, but at the center of this world system, it's still the United States. So let me ask Francesco RONCHI, who wrote about the United States politics, because what is coming is very serious for Europe, to give us a few thoughts. Can be shorter than the BRICS.
Thank you, László. Thank you, Maria, for this invitation. So I would start with the good news. The good news is that history is on Biden's side. Since 1922, all incumbent Democratic presidents have been reelected, with one exception, Carter. So that's the good news. I have another good news. The good news is the American economy, the US economy, is doing well, is doing great, is booming. So this could help the incumbent president. But I have other news that are less rosy, less positive. The first one is that Biden has a big weakness, and this weakness is named Biden. Of course, Biden is a great politician. We know, we appreciate the leadership, but American US voters, they perceive Biden as a weak president, as someone who's not mentally and physically sharp to be president of the US, and this is a big weakness. So against this backdrop, I think that Democrats are trying to use the playbook, have already successfully developed and implemented in the 2022 midterm elections that were surprisingly positive for Democrats. And I would like to highlight 3 pillars of this strategy. The first one has to do with democracy. a kind of negative mobilization against Trump and focused not only on the personal dangers related to this very controversial personality, but also to voting rights, to the fact that Republicans, they have been trying in many states, in particular swing states, to change the rules of the game in order to help them to win the elections. The second pillar has to do with reproductive rights, with abortion. As you know, in 2022, the Supreme Court, the conservative Supreme Court, took a very significant decision to overturn the Roe Wade decision, and it was a very strong move against abortion as a federal right, but this decision backfired against Republicans, and some swing states were won by Democrats also because of this negative mobilization, because people, and in particular women, are scared. They're scared by Republicans. And the Democrats, they want to play this card. They're already playing this card. Kamala Harris is going to leave DC, Washington, to do a tour around America to stress the importance of abortion. And important referenda are foreseen, are scheduled next year, this year, in swing states, including Nevada and Arizona. So this is an important element to take into account. Will it be enough? Well, there are some significant signs of fatigue in the US Democratic voters. And these signs of fatigue, they come from, I would say, two constituencies. The first one, it's quite surprising, I have to say, non-white voters, Black voters and Latino voters, in particular, Black voters. Of course, they're supporting Biden, but we see that there is less and less support. He's still leading, of course, but the edge is shrinking, and this is a worrying sign. And then we have Latinos also, and young voters. I have to say that October the 7th, what happened in Gaza is not helping. It's not helping Democrats, because we see more pronounced signs of fatigue after Gaza and the position of the US administration, in particular in young voters and Black voters. So it's difficult for me to forecast what will happen. We know that it will be a neck-and-neck election, and that, of course, we'll pay a lot of attention to what will be happening in the European elections, but I think that also we'll become familiar to places like Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, because these are the swing states. What we can say is that the picture doesn't look very rosy, and I think that we need to be prepared, and we need to fasten the seat belts for next year, very bumpy journey in America. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please join us here if you want. I forgot to mention that Francesco has been teaching at Columbia University in New York since you saw him last. Thanks you very much. But now we come back to Europe, more precisely the heart of Europe. And what is the heart of Europe? It is social Europe. And we asked Professor Caroline Della Porte, who's joining us from Copenhagen. Caroline, welcome. Thank you very much for taking the time. And maybe you could sum up your contribution to the Progressive Yearbook.
So thanks very much first for inviting me to make
unmuting. Who needs to unmute?
I'm unmuted.
1 second, please. 1 second, please.
I am unmuted, but
maybe now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I can hear a bit of an echo, but maybe it doesn't matter. Okay, so first I wanted to say thank you for inviting me to make a contribution to the yearbook, and thanks for inviting me to present. And also it was my pleasure to hear Maria Rodrigues mentioning all of the achievements in social Europe regarding equality and social protection, but also the challenges with regards to the aging population. And of course, social Europe, compared to all these international relations issues, may seem like a small issue, but social Europe is where citizens meet Europe. And that's why it's super important that citizens don't feel alienated, and that they also feel that their country and Europe contributes to their well-being and their social rights. So as a long-term observer of social Europe, of course, I'm impressed by the European Pillar of Social Rights from 2017, and it's unfolding. There's been many initiatives to fulfill what Juncker called the upward social convergence. It's been pursued by von der Leyen as well. Of course, all of you in Brussels, I'm sure you follow even more closely than I do. But what's different with the Pillar of Social Rights compared to 25 years ago is that the instrument used to increase and enhance social rights for citizens is a regulatory instrument, or mainly regulatory instruments, and also partly fiscal, and not so much open method of coordination and exchanges, which was dominant at the time of the Lisbon strategy, also launched, where Maria Rodrigues played an important role. And of course, the regulatory instrument is a stronger instrument. It requires member states to implement the commonly agreed laws in social Europe. But at the same time, there's also a risk in the debate, because the debate assumes that if you have a hard law, then automatically this leads to a level playing field. However, that's not always the case, because on the one hand, there are ambiguous clauses in the laws themselves, which can be implemented in different ways. And on the other hand, even if they're the same clauses, they can be interpreted in different ways. So I've been part of an EU project for a few years, examining social rights. I focus more specifically on one directive, work-life balance directive, but this presents a lot of lessons to keep in mind also for the current directives which are about to be implemented. So what we've observed is that even though countries implement EU law similarly and with a high degree of ambition, it's implemented on the ground in very different ways. So this is not about the rule of law. This is more about day-to-day policy making. For instance, if I take two very different countries, Poland and Denmark, they've both implemented the directive fully and with very high levels of ambition. Yet in Denmark, we can see the effect immediately in terms of father-specific leave, which is the focus of the directive, while in Poland, it's less visible. It's not that it's not there, but it's not as prominent as in Denmark. I won't go into the details of this. And the challenge for social Europe is that if then these directives are not implemented similarly across all EU countries, then this will lead to divergence between countries and even within classes across EU countries. So this means that special attention needs to be paid to simple things like administrative capacities, and that the social rights agreed at the EU level, that they are communicated to the citizens. Because if citizens don't know about their rights, then of course they will have a difficult time to access it. And it's not only in Eastern Europe or Southern Europe that these are challenges. Also in Germany, administrative procedures are complex in this area we've studied. And one of the reasons that people do not access their rights is lack of information and lack of capability to access their rights. So this is something which is important across all European countries to address. Of course, if you're interested in reading more, there's a very short contribution in the yearbook on this topic, and then there's also plenty of publications on this that we've produced throughout the project. So yes, Social Europe is important, but at the same time, I advocate for focusing on depth and having a break with breadth. Because now important directives need to be followed through: minimum wage directive, platform work directive, and they have a very strong element of decentralization. And if this isn't followed through on the ground, then we risk imperfect implementation, and thus that the EU doesn't lead to upwards social convergence as was the intention of the pillar. Thank you for your attention.
Caroline, I think the message is clear. The message is clear. I can echo myself, no? That first of all, for the next legislative cycle, the pillar of the social rights has to be handed over, and the implementation is going to be crucial, right? So the directives do not implement themselves. It's the member states that have to implement them. If I can just simplify this. Look, the next speaker is not an author, but we thought it's a very good idea to invite somebody who is a very good reader and can point out some observations, interesting things before you start reading your own copy. And in the next 5 or 6 minutes, Patrick Diamond from London is going to deliver this set of observations with a critical eye.
Thank you very much. Well, it won't be too critical because I am in Brussels and I want to get out again. So I'll be very careful about what I do say. But it's great to be with you and to be with the President and Minister and honoured guests. This is a wonderful collection of people. It means a lot to me to be here because these days in the UK, we don't get out very much. We don't get a chance as much as, of course, we did to learn and experience what is happening in other countries, including, of course, in our crucial European Union family. So it's really an honour to be here, and I'm delighted to have been invited. I just wanted to say about the yearbook, congratulations to the FEPS team. I won't name them because László already has. I don't want to embarrass them any further, but the editors have done a great job in pulling this together. And I think, as we can see this evening, the authors have really pulled together some very thoughtful contributions. What I like about this yearbook, and I think this speaks not just to this particular publication, but to the historic contribution of FEPS, is the role that it plays in helping us as a political family to think, to analyse and to understand. And this is extremely important in a world which is characterised by unprecedented economic turmoil and geopolitical conflict. It's very easy for our parties, I think, to be inward looking. It's very easy to be small c conservative. It's very easy, in a sense, to hide from the change which is going on. But what FEPS does in so many ways is to force us to think imaginatively about what is happening in our world and how we respond to it. Not just to think, but also to act. But to act, to deliver, we have to understand and we have to analyse and we have to have knowledge. Another, I think, key theme, which very clearly comes out of the yearbook, is about the importance of thinking long term. And again, I think this is something which social democratic parties in many countries have struggled to do, in many respects, understandably, because they're faced with many short-term, immediate political pressures. But for me, reflecting on all of the chapters in the yearbook, the crucial challenge for social democratic parties is not just to think long-term, but it's to balance two things. It is to be able to respond effectively to short-term shocks and crises, while at the same time being able to pursue a long-term strategy. And that isn't easy. I've been in government, I know how hard it is, but this is what we have to strive to do. And I think we can see this in specific policy sectors. If we think about the economy, for centre-left parties that get into power, there is an immediate challenge to help voters who are facing unprecedented cost of living crises born of rising inflation and enormous economic pressures. And they need immediate help today. Working families need the support of government to help them through this difficult time. But we also need long-term reform, as this yearbook points out. We need an industrial policy, as Maria said. We need redistribution, which tilts the balance of the economy in favour of workers and away from capital. We need action on wealth inequalities to tackle the horrendous wealth divides that afflict so many of our societies. I think one particular suggestion that I would pick up from the yearbook, which I thought was enormously useful and constructive, was the idea of a billionaire's tax. We need this kind of radical action, and we need not just to collect the money, but also to reinvest it in helping to break down intergenerational divides and intergenerational inequalities. Also on energy, of course, we're talking about the green transition this evening. There are short-term pressures to deal with the effects of the price shocks that we've seen over recent years because, not least, of Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. But we also need long-term thinking about the green transition. We need to invest in new infrastructure. We need to invest in renewables. We need to make more progress on climate change. So across all of these themes, it is about balancing the ability to act in the short term with pursuing and enacting a long-term strategy. And of course, I would say, as somebody coming now from a non-member state, to do that, to deliver, we have to have a strong Europe, a Europe which has the capacity to act in all of these areas. I want to finish, though, by talking about elections. The yearbook mentions crucial elections that took place last year. In Spain, of course, great victory. In Poland, an amazing historic result. And this year we have elections, of course, in the United States, as we've heard, for the European Parliament, and also in the United Kingdom. My reflection would be, for centre-left parties, wherever they are in the world, in order to do well in these elections, they've got to do three things. They've got to show voters how they will help them face risks which are too big to face alone, whether that's in relation to the welfare state, the risk of unemployment, ill health, old age. In all of these areas with Social Europe, we have to show people how we will help them face these risks. Second, we have to give people the means to shape their own lives, to participate in decisions, to be able to lead lives that they have reason to value. And third, they have to be enabled to live in strong communities, not just of rights, but also of responsibilities and duties, which means building the sense of place and locality and the places where people live. So let me just finish with a note of optimism. This is a new year, so it's important that we don't depress ourselves. It's important that we leave this room feeling that there is hope for the future, and I think that there is hope. Certainly in the United Kingdom, we have the opportunity this year with the general election to turn the page on what I think many people have now concluded has been 8 years of a failed right-wing populist project, which has had so many damaging consequences for our people. This will open up the opportunity for a new partnership between the United Kingdom and the European Union. I'm not pretending that that will be easy or that there will be any magical overnight solution, but there is a means, I think, to develop a new partnership based on economics and security, which can be positive for the region of the world in which we live. So I just finished by saying congratulations to the authors and the editors, and to László and to Maria. I think this yearbook is of enormous value. And as we approach the year ahead, let's have hope and let's have some optimism for the future. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the very kind words. I think it's very clear. And thanks also for highlighting the importance of the British elections and what is an anticipated result of this election. And hopefully it doesn't go wrong in the remaining time. Yes, exactly. I don't know how many fingers are crossed in order to ensure that this result is going to be what is expected now. Since we are so perfectly on time, I would like to ask the authors to return to their seats and highlight that after the formal part of the event is closing, there will be an informal part. So you can start discussing with the authors, but also the fellow readers, the content of the book. And I would myself move ahead to the next stage of the presentation, which is about the Progressive Person of the Year. And this is also a tradition. Of course, the book itself is a tradition, but even more, we are proud of this process that every time when we start preparing the volume, of course, we also look for inspiration. If there is no other reason for selecting a Progressive Person of the Year every time, the importance of having inspirational leaders, inspirational figures, inspirational thinkers, inspirational activists, or sometimes the combination of all this. This is very, very important because politics is not only about theories and analysis, but it's also the real life and the real life achievements. Before introducing the progressive person, I would like to ask our president to join me on stage, because together we will watch a short video which will present the progressive person. And before that, I just want to highlight 3 points, right, which mattered so much for us. The number one is that now at the closing of this cycle, we looked at not only 1 year, but 5 years. And we saw what is in this Brussels political cycle, perhaps the most important issue, which mattered life and death for many of us, or the human civilization. And that's obviously the question of the climate, which was high on the agenda. But the key thing is not to promote an agenda when the wind is favorable, but also when the political wind is against you. And that's the tougher subject. And I think this was very important. The second one is the long-term collaboration with FEPS, because in 2019, we were in New York and we promoted at the global stage the importance of climate action together with young and old, international community, civil society, and think tanks. So this also was very important. And the third one is what was referred to by Patrick Diamond, the Spanish elections. A few years ago, we wrote about the Italian experience as a great escape. I think now it's the Spanish socialists who delivered a great escape, a great resurrection, can we say, a kind of revitalization, refreshment of socialist politics. And because of this, we decided that the progressive person should be Teresa Ribera, who has been with us fighting for all these important causes together with FEPS and especially with Spanish socialists.
If I must say a word, is that I saw the pictures here. I saw myself in person. And I remember you, Teresa, first of all, here in the European Council meetings, dealing with the Parliament. I remember you, of course, in the Spanish front line, leading personality. But I cannot forget you when we were together in New York on the eve of the United Nations Climate Summit. And we had a big shock between Trump on one hand and Guterres. And you were there bringing a strong European progressive voice inside the United Nations buildings, in the streets of New York, big rally with the Greta Thunberg. So there were incredible experiences. And then we saw you leading the European position in different COPs, including the last one. You could not sleep overnight, I know, very, very busy task, but we are so proud because I would say if there is a good example of a leading European personality in the green transition and being a woman, is you. So really great honor to have you as the person of the year. You fully deserve, and I'm sure that all of us, we are very proud of your example.
Yeah, you can hand it over to us.
That's a symbol of the reward. And then
Thanks a lot.
make sure that the micro is available.
This is going to sit there. That's
The glasses, the sounds, everything,
doesn't work.
everything matters. No, thanks a lot. I feel honored. I feel the privilege of being recognized by my family. So thanks a lot, because I think that this means a lot. This means a lot for many different reasons, including, let's remind ourselves that this idea, working on a Green New Deal, comes from this very precise home. So if this has been possible during the mandate of the Ursula von der Leyen Commission, was thanks to the fact that FEPS and progressive thinkers were trying to figure out what should be the main character of this commission in the last 5 years. And we have done a lot, not enough, because we still need lots of things to do. We have learned from those progressive countries, those progressive families, those progressive governments that have been working around these lines in the last 20, 30 years. It has taken a lot of time to get into this. But I think that now, as we were saying, things change a lot. And the main question, as you were saying, and Lina and me will have to invest in being fit for 55 this year, because we both are born in 1969. So we need to fit for 55 in 2024. But we need to pay attention to the elections. I think that there is so much at stake, both domestically, but also in the international arena. So reading back what you have been commenting, what you have been saying, I was thinking of some examples of these last months to show to what extent these things are at stake, and we need to take back the message in the right manner to the general public, to the voters. I was thinking of the traditional European values, big words. What happened after the Second World War? We Europeans, in an alliance between the Social Democrats and the Christian Democrats, thought that in order to build peace, we need multilateralism to solve global challenges, international challenges, and that we needed to build European projects around steel and coal, around economic prosperity and so on. And we were united in this type of goals. And then in the last months, we have such a strange list of examples that things are changing that I was thinking why. For instance, I come back a year ago in Montreal. We reached a fantastic agreement on biodiversity. We knew that progress for humankind needed to take into consideration environmental challenges, including biodiversity. Even more, it was not only that at the multilateral level we reached agreements, it is that the minister chairing this discussion was the Chinese minister. So of course, there's this temptation of being part of global governance, but there is also the involvement of China in these type of issues. And then we came back to Brussels. And what we got? Christian Democrats challenging the natural restoration law, thinking that we had gone too far and that we needed to reduce the standards of protection of wildlife. What it is happening here? And then we come back to something that it is very appreciated in this room. Rational, intellectual thinking is fantastic. But sometimes emotions and perceptions do not necessarily match with rational, intellectual thinking, and good results and long-term views. So the question back to us is how we can ensure that when we deal with rational, intellectual reasons why to play for what we need to push forward, common horizons, to need to match back to emotional aspects and to people, to need to connect, to relate to everyday's concerns of normal people. And this happens here, back home, at the domestic level, at the European level. But this also relates to your questions on what type of governance with the BRICS, with the US, how we are perceived in other regions of the world, preaching and preaching, but who is helping me to solve the problems? Is maybe the BRICS coalition something more effective in terms of solving problems? Do I care about global issues if I have problems to be solved next to my door? Do I care about common projects if I don't feel the benefits, if I don't experience the benefits of what you are trying to tell me, to sell me? And there is not any intellectual reason why combating climate, working for social welfare, trying to preserve and restore biodiversity, so trying to deal with the physical aspects that provide wealth should be rejected by anyone. But there is a deep lack of confidence on how we are proposing to solve these issues. And I think that this is part of our agenda. This is probably the main challenge we have in front of us. How we combine intellectual and rational with emotional and experience coming from people to avoid populism, to avoid playing against us and to undermine the credibility of the institutions that we have been building for a long while. Because there is no doubt, of course, we need these green aspects in the core of any single economic policy, in the core of any single social policy. But we need much social policy in order to achieve the goals. We need to pay attention to the transactional cost of what we are doing, and we need to pay attention to those that feel this as a threat. So the emotional aspects of all of this. My impression is that we will have to keep the big words, but we still need to go much deeper in the very small details on how we can provide the different avenues to succeed. Because in this case, I think that it is success or big blow up. And it is not in 10 years' time. A very first relevant milestone is what is the picture that we get after the elections to the European Parliament in June 2024. Fit for 55, Lina. Sorry, but we need to work on that. How we can combine different populist governments in place in member states with populist parliament holding the majority at the European level. How we can combine this sense of common goods to be protected, to be promoted, common prosperity to be supported, with the very concrete fears and expectations coming from the very local perspective up to the big institutions. And I think that this has to be the main battle, and this has to be the main way to identify the drivers for the campaign. Of course, it's not just talking about macroeconomics and business opportunities, it's talking about social welfare and jobs and innovation. Of course, it is not talking about climate disasters, but how we can anticipate building resilience. It's not just talking about open autonomous strategy, it's talking about co-development and solutions with our neighbors, with our traditional partners all over the world. And it is not just talking about finance, but thinking how we get rid of all that carbon, how we can decarbonize the whole, not only financial, but in general terms, development support systems. And I think that the good news is not that Democrat presidents tend to be re-elected, but that we will count on a Labour government in the United Kingdom, which is very important, and that we will have to be prepared to develop a new strategy, a new updated strategy, to understand that we need to be proud, brave, and audacious to be the bridge builder that we need to be, not only because of the interest and the shake of the rest of the world, but very precisely because of our very own egoist interest. So thank you so much.
You have time for a few questions? Oh, okay. Thank you so much for this talk. Indeed, it's been a great honor to listen to you. And I should also highlight that the interview can be found in the book, which after our conversation in Malaga. And if I'm not mistaken, this is the first colored picture in the history of the Progressive Yearbook. Of course, we always had colored pictures outside, but this is the very first one inside, which we did in Malaga. And the interview itself already can be found on Spotify as a podcast, so it can be also listened to because it was so interesting. But if you have time for a few questions, may I start with one, and maybe the audience can think about a couple of more. I'm the person here who is a little bit obsessed with the elections, especially the European ones. And the question really is, to what extent, in terms of setting the agenda for the next cycle, this European Parliament election matters? Because my impression is that 5 years ago, indeed, the mobilization of the young people, a lot of events among the youth, school pupils, indeed contributed a lot to deciding that a Green Deal should be on the top of the agenda of the Commission. To what extent do you think this mobilization would matter this time?
Well,
use that mic, please.
I'm convinced that it is absolutely crucial. And I think that the youth is the main group where we should be building alliance in order to be progressive, because being progressive, looking forward means taking into consideration what type of future we need to shape for the youth. So it is, again, very important to identify not only what in terms of substance, which is, according to my own understanding, quite obvious, but how we reach the youth. Because we probably tend to be still quite intellectual and old-fashioned in trying to reach the people. And I don't have the answer, but that's what we try to do also in the Spanish elections, to identify how we can work in a different manner, how we can share concerns and solutions, and to ensure that people can rely on the confidence that we may deserve. We are with you, how we connect. But the ways young people communicate among themselves may differ from the ways we older people, ready for 55,
Yes.
communicate among ourselves. So I think that this is very important.
Thank you very much. So any further questions? It can be also in Spanish if you want.
While we're waiting, I like to come with a question, which is, can you tell us what was your happiest day as a politician? Can you remember this? Not easy.
Well, I
No.
have many happy days. I'm lucky. Because I think that we have gone through very interesting, challenging, and outstanding positive days in our recent life. Even in situations that we thought that it was impossible, we managed. And of course, I can quote some of them. I can refer to some of them. It was very interesting to see how this wave of understanding supporting Pedro Sánchez when he challenged the previous Prime Minister, Mariano Rajoy, was fulfilled, and how we were perceived, and that was the expression being used by the media, we were perceived as the dream team, dream government, the set of ministers in place in the very first government of Pedro Sánchez. It was the most horrible day, or one of the most horrible days, just to compare, was at the 29th of May. We could not believe the results. Of course, it's not that the polls were not saying that there was a race of the far right or the Popular Party, but in fact, the efforts, the investment, the results, the outcome, the rationale, the figures in very difficult circumstances were outstanding, fantastic. We had done everything we could have ever dreamed of to support the people, to invest, to recover, to make the things fantastically well. So, again, rationally, we could have said, no, people is going to understand this. People will be supporting. And then when you see the map in blue, you say, there's something that does not work here. So how we can draw lessons from here and reconnect and defend and attack and explain and motivate and connect emotionally back with the people. And that was another very good day.
Your smile.
Yes.
Close to Pedro Sánchez.
Yes.
When we won again.
Yes. When we
Yeah.
won.
It was actually at 6:50 when Pedro Sánchez was first mentioned tonight. Let's send him a round of applause because I think he also deserves it, no? Yes. Okay. Next question from Britta Thompson, please. Could Elaine please pass the microphone to Britta?
Gracias por su intervención. I will speak in English so everybody can understand. I think it's very interesting that László asked you about the young people, because I will take the opportunity to ask you about the old people, especially in relation to the European election, because it's my impression that many are not voting. And Maria João said earlier in her speech, she talked about the welfare state, the elderly people, and Spain has now not only Europe's, but the world's oldest population. And I remember I saw some of your campaign videos during the years, during Zapatero, Sanchez, how you are going out and mobilizing in the villages with the old people, sending young people out to collect the votes and do a lot of effort. Are you going to do that again during the European election?
Yes, of course. I think that we need to get this effort done. I think that we need to connect back with young people and to stay connected, to stay in tune. Something that I have 3 daughters, 24, 23, and 21. And they were telling me, Mom, I don't know who deals with the way you connect with people. But these other guys we do not support, with who we do not like, are sending us through, I don't know, TikTok, whatever, messages all the time. Perceptions, emotions, realities, and facts do not match. So pay attention on how people is connecting and is discussing on these issues. And I think that they were right, and that was what we tried to do in this last election and what we are still working on every single day. And the other very important thing is that, as it was in the case of Brexit, people get used to the good things and take them for granted. And suddenly they discover that they did not fight to preserve what they had taken for granted. And I think that this reference needs to stay in our minds, in our moods, but also to be explained. So it's not to get any kind of fear, but to remember, fight for those values, those things that you do appreciate. And Europe matters, and the European project matters. And the capacity to solve problems together and to invest in a better future is much more, how to say, not only appealing, but probably easy to succeed than going on around and fighting each other and coming back to the national interest as a way to block even decisions that almost to be taken at the very last minute through the normal decision-making process. So I think that this is very important to learn to appreciate what it means being together and building together prosperity.
Thank you. Last opportunity to raise hands or ask questions if you have any. Yes.
I have not a question, but I was very concerned what you said.
Microphone, please.
What you said in the beginning. You told you are 55, I am 71. And for me, it's the ninth European election, but the first that I am on the list. But I will not be elected. I will support this list because the party asked me to go to the senior people. And what you said at the beginning is very true. I am living in Brussels, living in Belgium, and I am the first generation who can say I never know a war in my life. And when we're looking to history, it's since the Romanian Imperium, 1,600 years ago. And I think when we talk about European election or European unification, it's very important. And also I will address me in the campaign also to the youngsters. We are very lucky because I am the first generation and people, some older than me, that we can say we never know a war around us, but where we are living, we never were confronted with a war. And you said it in the beginning, it's because we make for our individual concerns, individual interest, common interest. And I am very afraid in this time, looking, for instance, in Belgium and Brussels, but also in Spain, how is growing up particular interest. And every community, little community said, it's my interest. And I think that in the campaign, we have also say to the people, make our interest common to solve the problems. And I think that and I was very concerned with what you told us, and I will thank you for your words. Thank you.
Well, I think that we may need to get back this idea of learning about common interest and common goods, which is also part of this discussion. So if we want to preserve freedom, individual opportunities being provided to all, good quality services, prosperity for all, so good aspiration and expectations to have children or to live here or there or to whatever, we also need to think in common interest and in the common goods. And I think that that's part of the living together that we need to put at the right role in the public discussion in these elections. And I think that very honestly, I think that we need to work hard from this right moment till the very last moment, and to be brave, audacious, positive, but clear and transparent. So to avoid getting people blocked because of the fears, but on the contrary, getting them empowered, but what we have achieved and what we want to keep on working to ensure that a brighter future can be achievable. And this is why I think the green agenda is appealing. But in the very last years, we have discovered that there are many challenges in the green agenda for the bad reasons, but they are being able to connect in the bad side and to shadow the contradictions of what they say. So I think that it's true. You're right. We need to work on how we explain what it means living together and living in a society, and to share with the others the value of the common goods.
Thank you very much. Congratulations again, and thanks for this very open and straightforward conversation with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And to close the program and deliver some final words. To close the program and deliver some final words, I would like to ask Lina GÁLVEZ, member of the European Parliament and the chair of the FEPS Scientific Council. Lina, the floor is yours. Yes, take this mic and then we listen to you.
Thank you very much. I have to say I'm very jealous of your Madonna micro.
Yes, and
I wish we have one of
next
them.
year, next year.
Yeah, next year. Yeah, I hope next year I will have again the honor to say some words in this the presentation of the Progressive Yearbook. I'm gonna be brief because we have been here from very early in the morning from with the scientific committee. I have been really working very hard towards the plan this year, dealing with the short-termism in a way of this election year, not only European, in the US, in many places in the world, around 70% of the population is going to elections this year, but also thinking very much in the long term and how really to make this progressive ideas and family to be ruling the world of the better of every one of the best of the planet as well. And obviously I'm honored and but really very happy as well because we have chosen Teresa Ribera, the Progressive Person of the Year, and really very happy because I think she deserved it. And she has been doing something very difficult. You were saying right now that the green agenda is appealing, but we know that there has been also a lot of fight and violence against the green agenda. And you have done so well on explaining and thinking and sharing about this cost, that we know there are costs as well and inequalities in this cost, but also especially about the benefits, about the opportunities, not only the benefits, obviously, that are always for the planet, but also for the economy, for society, good jobs, good labor. So I think you have done a great job about a very difficult issue, and also dealing with the timing, because you are talking mainly about a long-term challenge, but you have to deal also with it short term, not only in the elections, but in every single day, as Maria was also telling in the COP and everything. And I would like just to add just one more thing before ending and going to the drinks that I'm sure everyone is really looking for, is that I'm really very glad you are a woman and a progressive woman in the decision making, because one of the things we are seeing in this twin transition or this de-transformation we are going through is that it's benefiting more men because of labor and because there is not enough women in decision making places. So you have been an inspiration, not only for young women, and I'm sure there will be more women getting into management on the green transition, of the energy transition, but I would say also for the older one, the ones that needs to be fit for 55 this year, as you and me. You have been an inspiration also for people, I think, and for women of different ages. So I hope we will manage to combat this, or to win this combat against climate change, but also against inequalities, because social is so important, and also against populism and this rise of the far right, that it is something we should really take care of. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for all the progressive family from being here. And now we could go for a drink.